Hello, Rachel.
Hello, Ryan.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Fine. I'm fine. Just fine and dandy. I mean, I'm actually fairly excited because we met a new friend in this episode. A very new friend of ours. Kosh is their name.
Mm-hmm.
They're different to our old friend Kosh. This is a
Yeah,
new Kosh.
new
He's got a new they've got a nice shiny purple outfit with a red eye and a cape that makes it far more noticeable that there's human legs walking when they move. And when we first got the establishment shot of him walking off the docking bay thing, I saw his feet kicking the cape. That's the first shot, and I noticed it instantly, and I thought, hey, the old Kosh never gave me that impression. Like, I could tell he sways when he walks, but never got the feeling that there were human legs. This one gave me legs. Thank you, new Kosh. But that's how I'm doing that. That's actually quite a complex feeling. I like to boil it down to just, I'm feeling yum.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Good to know. Good to know.
I'm feeling yum. You're feeling yum. I can tell because you have a big smile on your face. And why is yum so important to this podcast? To the point in which we name the podcast after it, and every single sci-fi show we cover, we shove yum or yum in it. This is Yum 5, where we talk about B5. Yum Trek is where we talk about Star Trek. Yum and Beyond is when we talk about space above and beyond on our Patreon. Why is this so key to us?
Our lives changed because of the line yum in Star Trek Discovery.
Wow. And what was the context, which is for kings, of that line in the show?
You didn't have to, but you wanted to.
Yeah. That's it. That's exactly it. I wanted to, and that's okay.
And
Don't context
Nan
shame me.
and Giorgio wanted to go murder the season-long antagonist.
You always want to say protagonist. Leland was your hero in that season. Because he wanted to kill Michael, and you had to root for somebody whose motivations match your own. And she said yum. Is Nan a well-developed character?
No.
Oh, okay, so who would have said yum in this episode of Babylon 5? With that knowledge now, with that groundwork, with that foundation, who in this one would be yumming?
Oh, I feel like the bartender that gives Franklin that drink
With
that
no
looks
lines.
like moldy chocolate milk.
Moldy.
If she'd said anything, it would have been yum.
I actually have a dark horse candidate myself.
I have a few others.
Yeah, go ahead.
But you want to dive into yours?
I didn't have multiple. Mine is Hobbs. Dr. Hobbs.
Hobbs was one of mine.
She came in with a certain mojo in this particular one, where her hair was literally down. That was the first note I had about her was, oh, her hair's down in this. And she just seemed to have in the previous episode we saw her, she had to be very stressed because her and Franklin were locking horns. Now we're getting to see the more day-to-day life of Dr. Hobbs, and she would have said yum when giving a prognosis. So that is my dark horse candidate. What were some of your other contenders of YYE yum energy?
The non-captain.
Yes. He was in the season 2 finale.
Yeah.
Played by Robin Sachs, who's played a few different aliens, Nan and Mbryo primarily.
Yeah. And this is slightly random, but you know that's what Yum is. One of the Minbari telepaths.
They had a yum expression on their face. You could tell that they wanted to lick their lips, but they were told not to. You're ruining the take. Stop licking those lips and flicking your hair back. You don't have hair, you have a bone. Delenn has hair.
But you see some validity in all of my candidates?
I think everyone had YYE out of all the people we mentioned. Everybody wins.
You've managed to import Breen from Homeworld. How?
It isn't actually Breen.
The smell, the taste.
It's an Earth food. They are called Swedish meatballs. It's a strange thing, but every sentient race has its own version of these Swedish meatballs.
We have a winner chicken dinner today. We're talking about Babylon 5. We're doing it through that rewatch, revisit perspective. So if you have not seen the series before, we always say that you should, because if you are wanting to see it and you're worried about being spoiled on things, we do spoil. We do talk about future episodes as well as this current one, because since we have seen the series a few times over, we like to go back and, as a couple, talk about what we're experiencing this time, and that's the whole point of the
Future,
podcast.
past, and present.
And we are having a gander at episode 18 of season 3, Walkabout. And the DVD description has this in mind for the plot. There's only one way to check out Sheridan's suspicions about the Shadow's vulnerabilities. Find one of their warships and engage it in battle. Plus... Sorry, I'm used to meanwhile.
Yeah.
Plus, Franklin begins a personal journey of enlightenment. And let's just get in. Walkabout is an episode that I forget frequently, and I always forget about it. What really sticks in my brain is one of the thumbnails for this on the DVD menu. When you press it, one of the chapters is that close-up shot of Lita's eye bleeding. That is a striking visual, and other than that, I always look this over.
Okay. Do you remember that shot is in this episode, or do you just remember that shot?
I do associate it with this episode because it is the thing that leapt out. And I remember the context of what the plot was for that moment. I know that this isn't in other episodes because it is just one of those things. But overall, this has been a forgettable affair. I have not engaged with it. I don't hate it. I don't love it. It is just something where all of the pieces are okay or boring. The Kosh stuff is interesting minorly, but it's not as interesting as the things you'll see with that going forward. It is just serviceable. Same with taking down... It's set up, and same with taking down the Shadows. It's a small victory, and that's how it feels. Small and quiet, which isn't a bad thing in itself, but there is a fine art to making a small, quiet episode. And Babylon 5 has succeeded at that, especially in Season 3 with episodes like Passing Through Gethsemane. While here, this has just bounced off my brain every time, and I'm curious to investigate a bit more why that is as we go into our discussion. What about you, Walkabout?
It's just one of that episode. Like, it's not bad, it's not good, it's fine. What makes it feel worse is the fact that it's coming off such bangers.
Oh yeah.
Like,
we just had 3 excellent episodes in a row.
It's like, and Walkabout, and oh fuck, Grey 17 is missing.
In a way, that also makes it more forgettable, because you never forget Grey 17 is missing because it's so batshit weird and so off-balanced in its A-B plot, but this is in between. This doesn't
go hard enough.
Yeah, this isn't stupid enough to remember, but it also isn't good enough either, so it just is Walkabout.
Yeah, it's just fine. It's just fine, which is part of what makes it so gosh darn forgettable.
For those people listening anew or who haven't been that observant, Rachel, we're Australian.
Yes.
We're both Australians.
I don't think I have that heavy of an accent, especially considering
you do.
People ask me what accent I have because I don't sound Australian to them.
But you are, and so am I. I've listened to our podcast, and I've heard that Australian twang. I don't know if anyone else has, but we are the only Australian Babylon 5 podcast. We're the only Babylon 5 podcast that is hosted by Australians. There's British ones, and American ones, and German ones. that's mainly it. So we have a very unique perspective to come at this, and Walkabout is the one I think both of us have been salivating over to have a discussion with, because it is one of the few times Babylon 5 has looked our way and said, I see you.
It
Not just
has
by
done it before.
but mainly with casting Australian actors. And
occasionally mentioning Australia.
yeah, but here, this is an acknowledgement of some Australian culture, specifically Indigenous culture.
Yes.
And let's just talk about Walkabout itself.
Okay,
this
can we get
stuff.
Before we do that, though, we need to acknowledge the way that he introduces the idea.
I wanted to first go through what we understand Walkabout to be,
Okay.
then what he has it,
I
then
just wanted-
what the cultural zeitgeist understand it, and then we can go on. What has been your understanding of Walkabout?
I just wanted to acknowledge that Aborigine is a no-no word now. I knew it as a very vague idea. Growing up, you would often say, like, when you don't know where somebody is, or they've just like sort of gone off on their own, you might say that they've gone walkabout.
Mm.
When I volunteered as a teenager at an Australian film festival, they showed Walkabout.
The film?
Yep, the film, and I did not watch it.
Interesting choice.
um,
Did you walk about? Did you just walk off? I'm not watching that.
No, I sat in the candy bar.
What? You missed Jenny Agutter finding a body of water and swimming around. 16-year-old Jenny Agutter.
I
Or
sat
younger.
out there because I had to go home before the movie was over, I think. And like had it reference the idea of Walkabout in different Australia media in terms of what was described as a rite of passage.
That's my understanding. I have rarely heard it used in that other context that you've described. I'm not saying it hasn't been in my passing of the world, but I haven't heard people use they've gone on Walkabout to describe they've walked off or wandered off or they didn't show up today.
I had a kid randomly do it in class the other day.
It is just something
and I was just
that
like, where is this come from?
I haven't encountered as strongly. I grew up in a very populated town for Indigenous people, and it is just some phrases, some touchstones were not used there. And I come down to Melbourne, which is also in a different state than my hometown, and there are just some terms that are just thrown about that took me for a loop because that's not what we use. One of the main ones being people referring to Aboriginal people as abos, and I'm like, whoa, that's not one I've heard as often, especially in my own age demographic, usually for people older. But yes, Walkabout, for me, I've always known it to be a coming-of-age rite of passage in which a young male would wander off, walk about in the outback or in the wilderness or in some...
Went bush.
Yes, went into the bush or something along those lines and survived out there on their own for a period of time, having used the skills they know about nature and about the land and flora and fauna and country and their own cultural background. And then they come back and now they are a man. And that has been my overall understanding. Then Babylon 5 came along. And Babylon 5 is a series that has, for the most part, really demonstrated succinctly and wholeheartedly and with a good amount of accuracy cultures and religious people's ways of being. We had Sitting Shiva, we've had all of the Catholic stuff, we've had a lot of things that have been brought to this series, and told in a very accurate way, with some minor discrepancies here and there, but it was the general, as we say in Australia, the general vibe of the thing was on point.
Thanks, the castle.
And Franklin describes Walkabout as such. In fact, let's just play a clip of what Franklin has to say it is.
You just leave everything and you start walking. I mean, the Foundation adopted the idea from the Aborigines back on Earth. The theory is, if you separated from yourself, you start walking, and you keep walking until you meet yourself. Then you sit down, and you have a long talk. Talk about everything that you've learned, everything that you felt, and you talk until you run out of words. Now, that's vital, because the real important things can't be said. And then, if you're lucky, you look up, and there's just you. And you can go home.
You know how crazy this sounds?
I have never heard this interpretation of Walkabout until this, and only in this.
Haven't heard it since.
This is the only time
The only one of its kind.
where it is this idea of walking until you meet yourself. And yes, yourself is a metaphor. And you have to find yourself. And that isn't the way that I've ever heard it be interpreted. And I've never heard it outside of this. So it's always rang alarm bells for me ever since I was young and going, whoa, did this show understand something that I don't understand? Because I was naive, and I think many people like this, especially with series they like, especially with intellectual series they like, where they go, whoa, the show must know more than I do, I guess. And you just take the show's word for it. I just go, oh, well, I'm sure JMS has looked this up, and this is just some variant of it that I've never heard of.
Yeah, he wouldn't deliberately put something in that's baseless. That would be irresponsible.
You've never heard this version of it?
No.
What do you think of this, though, this version? What has been your overall reactions to it?
It always felt off to me. It never felt like it was an Aboriginal thing that he was actually talking about. I was just like, yeah, Walkabout's meant to be a thing, but this doesn't fit with my understanding of their culture.
No.
Because, like, a large part of my understanding of most of the nations that are across Australia, they have a very centered way of being that comes from living on and being a part of and being a custodian of the land.
Mm.
So the idea of you being separated from yourself doesn't fit well into that.
Mm.
Like the idea of them being two separate people and being lost when so much of their traditions are about being unified as a group, as a people, with their land and respecting the land and being interconnected in all of these various ways, that it doesn't feel like they would have a whole thing about being separated from that. Not in the way that he describes.
I am with you, and I want to just clarify some things for people out there. Rachel, you don't have any Aboriginal in your family. You don't have any lineage or any connection. I do, but it is not something that I have ever engaged with. It is not something that I would claim. I would never claim that I am Aboriginal. I do have that in my heritage.
You don't tick that box, but you could if you wanted to.
And if I wanted to learn more about it within my own family, I could if I wanted to explore that. I grew up in, as I mentioned just a little while ago, in a community that was very, very actively embracing of that culture. There are certain areas in Australia where there just are not very many Aboriginal people about because of, well, colonialism.
Like
and
my hometown, where it's like an ideal location,
Mm.
to be the heart of an Aboriginal culture.
You have an Aboriginal community centre even.
Yeah, but we don't have
You don't have
any native people that live in town.
you don't have any you don't have any specific people there because they were either
Chucked off their land
or killed.
it
And
was
that's just the unfortunate
developed into farms
and that's just
taken
the
over by
unfortunate
white people.
bloody
So-
history of Australia. And so I always raised my eyebrows at this, and I wanted to know more about it. And so you and I have done some research into this stuff, and I want to also say I did contact a few different Aboriginal consultants or Indigenous groups, and as of this recording, I haven't heard back from any thus far. I've emailed and dropped some phone calls, but what we're going to discuss here has just been some research of our own. So I don't want to be an arbiter who says what we're saying is 100% factual.
It's from what we've found.
From what we can gather ourselves and our own experiences. And whenever I listen to any other Babylon 5 podcast who has covered this episode, everyone just goes, oh yeah, Walkabout, yeah, sure. And they just accept it, like, there's never any raised eyebrows. Yet I've listened to other podcasts, like I say, that talk about extensively all of these culturally suspicious or bizarre or what is this in the context of the show when it comes to something like naming the ship a Cortez, naming the explorer vessel Cortez. I've heard large discussions about that because those things are well known to those podcasters who are either British or American. Walkabout is something that is framed for us.
Yeah.
And so whenever anyone else talks about this that isn't from here, they just accept it as, well, that's a thing. That's a thing.
Yeah.
And Babylon
Said with
5's
such confidence.
and Babylon 5's version must be the thing because it's probably the most succinct way it's ever been explained. Even though for us, this isn't Walkabout. And then what is Walkabout? Because honestly, I only just ever hear it as this whispering phrase and, oh, there was a movie once. But no one I know who's Aboriginal has ever actually mentioned Walkabout. So I wanted to gather some pieces of information about. Now, Rachel, you went on the Last Best Babylon 5 podcast and talked
Yes.
about Walkabout a bit there, and you did some stuff. Now, I actually have gathered some for myself where it comes from some places. So I have here some specific Aboriginal groups that talk about Walkabout. So do you want to hear that?
Yes.
So here's the first one. Here's the description that was in this from the Reconciliation Queensland Incorporated, which deals with First Nation cultures. Walkabout for many First Nations people is a contentious word and is considered an archaic colonial term. Its use by non-Aboriginal people is considered inappropriate, and that is from the Reconciliation Queensland Incorporated. They advise against its use when discussing the First Nations cultures. That was 2021. Now I have the Queensland Government's 2010 Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Studies Handbook. Now Queensland is a state here in Australia that also, I would say that Northern Territory and Queensland are the Aboriginal people that are associated the most heavily with Walkabout. The handbook says as such, the purposeful and seasonal movements of Aboriginal peoples have long been inaccurately portrayed as being random wanderings, rather than the expression of intimate knowledge and spiritual connectedness with their land. Terms such as nomad and walkabout are deeply associated with this inaccurate view. The European belief that all land was the same to the Aboriginal groups wandering across it rather than specific areas belonging to particular Aboriginal groups also served to justify the invasion and appropriation of lands.
And again, that is speaking more in the sense of walking about,
Mm-hmm.
not this rite of passage thing which we grew up associating with the term.
Yes. There's many debates online and in the world about Walkabout. If it even exists, is this a thing that was made up by Europeans or misinterpreted by the English? A lot of people, weirdly enough, that I see online defend Walkabout as a phrase are English people because they say here it's fine.
Yeah, no, that doesn't matter. That's not what counts.
So, from this, I believe myself, and again, I would love to actually know from Aboriginal people more so, but from what I can gather is Walkabout doesn't seem to be a real thing.
No.
Not in the way
So-
that we've been told it, not in the way that this series explains it either.
Yeah, and the one site that I found in my research that acknowledged it was like, oh yeah, we didn't have Walkabout like it's described. And I think probably a good chunk of where that idea comes from is the novel that the Walkabout film was originally based on, which is by a British white dude.
And the film is also a British film.
Yes.
Made here
Just-
with some Australian actors, but the
yeah.
lead actress is British and the
Yeah.
director is British.
So, and then I think it was a magazine article from maybe like the 50s. I feel like it was quite some time ago. And they were like, yeah, Walkabout isn't actually a thing. There are these different rites of passage and processes that particularly, like, they focused on young men because the idea of Walkabout is very much focused on
Adolescents.
adolescent males. And there's different rites of passages for females within these groups.
So it's really bizarre that Franklin's going on a walkabout when, even if you want to believe the consensus of what a walkabout is, it is still really strange that Franklin's going on it when it is agreed upon that it is a coming of age
Yeah.
rite of passage. It's as if, like, I can't explain how bizarre it is, but if we want to give JMS the benefit of the doubt that even us Australians have a very hard grasping understanding of Walkabout, what it is, where it came from, and even if it is real, I can forgive that because this is an American writing in the mid-90s, and he probably knows the phrase, he probably knows that it comes from Aboriginal people, and back then, even if he did research it, he may have only found limited things that corroborate what the understanding of it is. So I don't want to say that this is racially insensitive or culturally off.
It doesn't feel malicious. It's not like, oh, I'm going to spread misinformation about this culture.
It is it's a byproduct of colonialism. That is what it is. It is
Yeah.
a byproduct. It is an afterwave of that, where there are just so many things when it comes to Australian cultures, whether it be the colonialist culture or the indigenous culture, that just have a narrative of their own that has taken shape over time, whether that narrative is real or not. What I do take issue with when it comes to JMS is his Lurkers Guide's comments about where he came up with the idea of Walkabout.
Yeah.
Now, you've read some of these.
I have.
Do you want to go over them now that we've laid out all of this and we've said, hey, JMS, he may have just had he may have just fallen in with the understanding that pretty much most people have. Why don't you tell us where he got this from? Because he got his version from somewhere, right?
Yeah, he did, but From what I remember from the comments, it was basically like, oh yeah, I heard of this idea and then applied it to my own thing that's entirely separate.
Yep. JMS would, as a young person, walk the streets at night, just alone, wandering from place to place because he was trying to find himself, understand himself, and get a feeling of the city. And he thought to himself, oh, this is like Walkabout. And then it became, this is Walkabout.
Yep.
And that's what he put in the show. This is Walkabout. His thing that he loved so much that he made Superman do it in his own, when he took over the Superman comics, he made Superman go on a walkabout, his version of a walkabout.
Yep.
That is where I take umbrage. It is also lampshaded or defended.
Don't even connect it to the idea of Aboriginals then. Like,
Yes.
it's completely irrelevant. Why drag them into this?
And it's defended, and I can hear some people saying, well, Franklin's religion is about grabbing and appropriating and reshaping the belief systems of many religions and cultures. That I can get, I do understand, but we know for a fact in the real world, thanks to JMS himself, that this is what he thinks a walkabout is. He's got his own version of it, and he said, oh, that's Walkabout, because here's what I think. When we experience things in life, especially things that give us enlightenment or wisdom, we want to associate it with something that's already got a foundation to it. And JMS...
So it adds validity.
I can imagine JMS was thinking to himself, what I'm doing, what is this? And then, oh, it's a walkabout. And that was it. That is what sealed it, and he's had that stuck. He had that stuck there for a very long time, and he's brought it into his work. And because Franklin points out specifically it is from this culture, us knowing a bit about that culture makes us raise our eyebrows and going, okay, well, your way of explaining it is very different. Where did it come from? Oh, it just came from JMS. Just, making what he was going through more profound by attaching a real-life culture to it. And that there, I would say, is cultural appropriation.
Stephen, you don't really believe there are two of you, do you?
No, it's a metaphor. Right? There isn't literally another me walking around the station, but the principle's real.
All of that is more interesting than the actual walkabout journey that Franklin goes on in the episode. All of that. Even Franklin's weird variant on what a walkabout is far more interesting to engage with than his plot. Would you not agree?
Yeah.
It's a very much a throwaway story. We both like Franklin. We're big Franklin defenders. Franklin's not a very popular character. Many people do like him, but there's many people who do not like this character. And so when you get a Franklin-centric episode, there have been times where it has fallen very, very hard because they don't know what to do with him in his own stories. They know what to do with him in relation to other people's stories or in conjunction with other stories.
Yeah, it's like JMS is also like in Franklin's shoes a little bit too much when he says like, who am I when I'm not a doctor? I don't know. JMS doesn't know either. So he's just a
Figuring it out.
horny sex pest.
Because that was his other character trait, is horny and cocky and arrogant. And there is something to explore there, where Franklin is going on this profound mission to find himself. And the first leg in that journey is finding himself being an arrogant son of a bitch. That is actually rather fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
I actually like that. And it doesn't mean that we have to make him likable for the audience. Just because he's not likable doesn't mean he's not a good character. And I wish that was here. Because realistically, the Franklin stuff, for the title of the episode, is the C plot here. It is the C plot in amongst these stories happening. It is the one that you're the least invested in because there's not enough definition to it. You understand it fairly quickly. It is, oh, Franklin's horny for this lady, then he's judgmental about her, and then he's proven wrong, and then he walks off. What I just described there is as nuanced as the story displayed it. This could be deeper. There could be more wrinkles to it. There could be more conversations and human moments. And the fact that I feel like Franklin doesn't not just learn from this, but he doesn't feel anything from this experience. He just is like, oh, well, I fucked up. Oh, well. And then at the end, he's smiling because she's a good singer. I just don't feel a lot of impact for this character from this little adventure, so it comes across even more so as a waste of time.
But that's just what it is in the end. It is a waste of time. Like, it is setting up something that in the rewatch we know doesn't really pay off. Like, it's not very satisfying what happens with Franklin's Walkabout. So
you don't like the conclusion to it? That's the thing. I actually fucking love where we go at the end, but
the end point is good. That final, like the scene where he actually does
confront himself,
and
the moral he gets from it is great. But the lead up to it is
the journey is not worth the time that's spent there. Even though, like, I guess in some ways the ending wouldn't be as satisfying without the lead up, of course. But I still think it would be fine. It would be fine if it was just like he just had a version of the scene where Garibaldi meets up with Franklin and he's like, I need time away from being a doctor to find who I am again. Forget calling it Walkabout. Don't do it.
Don't do it, JMS.
Don't do it.
Stop it, bad boy.
Leave Australian culture out of it.
Could you just leave us alone? Every time you use us, have us here, it makes me upset. There was that one time we had an Australian actress in Passing Through Gethsemane, and it was fine because she was really Australian and she wasn't evil and she wasn't misappropriated. So could we stop it, JMS? I like the ending of the Walkabout thing, and that is what I think JMS liked. He, in real life, had an experience where he got stabbed and he had to crawl his way and take life and live it. And he got that real experience, and he wanted that in the show because it is such a powerful thing. You start at the end first, and then you have to make things go to that. And that is what this is. It is just a thing. It's an obligation to get to that point. Like, you have to have the build-up to get the reward. And that's what it is. It's very writerly. It is mechanical. It is not endearing us to Franklin, to Franklin, or getting us sympathetic towards him. All it is doing is making me go, okay, buddy, okay, radio. Like, I'm not even pissed at him in this episode. I'm more just like, okay, I'm glad you got some sex.
I'm glad you got some sex.
I'm glad. Why isn't this the A plot? You could expand this to be a very character-driven A plot where you have more conversations between him and the jazz singer. You can have more moments of getting to know who she is and who he is and how he presents himself when he's no longer the doctor. But honestly, they have one major conversation, then they have sex, and then, wouldn't you know it, she's unconscious and he takes her to the sick bay, and then he gets exposition put onto him. that is the extent. There is no connection. That's what I think also makes it fall apart. And I want to know what you think about this, being a big fan of romance in your stories, whether they be one-offs or continuous, is even though the actors are charismatic actors, there's no time given to them to
No.
fall in love or at least have that reason to care for one another.
JMS is not good at writing one-night stands. And that's essentially what this is. And they're trying so hard to make this clunky dialogue work. And it feels awkward. But they're not playing it off like it is awkward. They're trying to, like, charm their way through it. And it's just like, are you hearing what you're saying? Are you hearing what you're saying? Because that's so fucking cheesy. And you really should be calling him out on his bullshit. But you're not. You're pretending like it's sexy. And that makes this even weirder.
And since we don't know enough about her, we don't justify the reason why she isn't reacting the way you're saying. If she was far more of a coy character or rambunctious person, say if this was Luxana Troy, I would believe it. I would believe that Luxana Troy would be turned on by this.
Mm-hmm.
And there is an art form to getting the audience to care about a relationship that forms over the course of 45 minutes.
Yes.
Edith Keeler in the original series of Star Trek is a prime example of that, where you have less than an hour for Kirk to fall in love with this woman and suffer the repercussions of growing attached to somebody from the past. It's a very great example of that. Same with Luxana Troy falling in love with the guy from Half a Life, or even Odo. And you have to do that in a short time, but guess what you do? You spend the time on it. Because if you don't, you get all of those dud romance stories that these shows have,
God.
where I just roll my eyes and go,
Plethora of
another one
them.
of these? We're really throwing this character into a horny tube? Like,
Yeah.
it is Garibaldi, when he would hit on Talia, and it would be like, okay, develop this more, but they never did. So you just go, okay, that was just silly stuff. Or whenever Riker falls in love with somebody, and you never believe it because they never develop his love. It's always a lustful love.
Yes. And like, this one is lustful on purpose. Even on the first watch through, it wasn't like, oh, Franklin's gonna get a girlfriend.
But it's
and
trying to be
she's
more poignant, though.
a jazz singer and down below. But it is like, and Franklin learns this lesson after having casual sex.
But it is trying to be more poignant with her conversations about the soul and who we are and what are you. And she's almost a philosophical character. I'm angry because there are two examples that almost feel like JMS is justifying why he did it like this, which is the first being the speech about the Walkabout with Franklin. That there is a crystalline, fully realized this is what this character's mentality is, and you can now follow them as they explore that and have that challenged. And you go, okay, I can't wait to see that.
Yeah.
And then JMS said, no, you know it. No, I'm just going to diddle about with all these other plots.
No.
And
We're
Franklin-
not resolving that this episode.
And I'm not saying resolve, explore, expand, and demonstrate.
Yeah.
And then she
Yeah,
has a speech.
fair- good point.
Then she has a speech about why she sings in Down Below. And that was actually my favorite moment in the episode. I thought her acting there and what she was saying was compelling, and I was screaming at the screen internally, why didn't you put this earlier in the episode? This is something where now the audience can be invested in her character. And we can go forward. You don't even have to reveal that she's dying for this conversation to make me want to care about her or want to watch more of this take up the screen.
If she explained that to him the first time, he's just like, oh, you can do better than this. If she was just like, no, this is me doing good.
Yeah. And it can then make Franklin reflect upon how he used his job as a way to give back to the lurkers. And now
Yeah.
he has to question, was that me being selfless as this woman is being, or was I being selfish? Was I being self-centered in that noble pursuit? See, we're already doing stuff that makes me want to watch this version of the episode rather than him saying a sleazy pickup line and then them drinking and laughing and then
Yeah.
having sex.
Because it's not like this episode doesn't have any potential. It delivers on part of it. Not with the Franklin shit. The Franklin shit's fucking useless. But with the other plot on the White Star, that delivers.
Mm-hmm.
That follows through and it gives you what it promises.
I also really like, but it's almost a figment of an idea, a wraith of an idea of Franklin refusing to be the doctor, but in so doing, he's being a doctor, and
Yeah.
it leads to negative results. He does not want to give her the drugs. He becomes judgmental. He becomes observant of her health, and he makes a judgment about what she is through the prism of his doctor behavior, but he thinks by doing this, he's not being a doctor. And then once everything goes down, he's going into the med bay and asking people like he's still their boss. There's something there with that. But the fact that it's just me saying that there's something there rather than there is a thing there that we are talking about is the real letdown. There's so many letdowns when it comes to the Franklin side because I like this character. I do. And this episode does not move the needle. It does not make me like him less. It does not make me like him more. It does not make me think about him more. Nor does it make me think about him less. It is just a
doesn't make
thing.
you think anything new about him either.
It's just a thing that is here so that we can get to that end game of him talking to himself
Yeah.
and going through the arc that has been building for 2 seasons or even 3.
You're a doctor, a scientist.
And?
And what?
Exactly.
Somebody new walks onto the scene, and we see that quite literally because you see his feet.
You see the outline of his feet. You see them kicking up the cape.
Yeah.
You don't see the feet, but you do see that there are feet under there.
Yeah, you see the feet. You know, yeah,
Kosh feet.
Kosh feet.
Oh, can we put that on one of those feet pick websites? Kosh feet. The little freaks will go off with that one. Ooh, Kosh feet. He should have gone to Londo's Ascension without the cape on.
Oh, I'm sure that Sean's already got a dedicated website.
Kosh, the new one, is here. And what do you think about this? What has been your overall journey with new Kosh? Because he's a new Kosh. There's a new Vorlon. We've never seen other Vorlons really, and he's purple and menacing instantly.
Yes. And he's there so much in this episode. Like, he's just lurking around.
I really liked it when they finish the battle and Lita gives off the ship and she goes, oh, I have to go over there. And in the corner behind some crates is just this fucking guy just standing there in his suit.
Yep.
Just breathing. You hear him breathing. That's a difference too. You hear this one breathe a lot more, but usually in the past when Kosh would talk, you'd hear that whirling sound and you could argue that's him taking a breath or whatever, like modulating. But this one, you can just hear him breathing a lot. He just all the time, and I love it. There was that moment where they asked Kosh a question when he wasn't talking to them, and he turned his head, and you know that turn is when, Kosh is going to talk, and instead it was just a... And that was it. That was all that came out. And they looked at him like, what the fuck is this little freak?
He doesn't give riddles. He doesn't speak in weird sayings.
He barely
He
speaks.
He is like one word sentence. Failure.
The most cryptic is, "We are all Kosh." And you go, what the fuck does that mean? And then he walks off.
Mm-hmm.
Although I have problems with the new Kosh in the series going forward, I do like him as an addition. I like the design.
It's a nice complication as
It's a
well.
nice complication. It's a great warning sign of the evil of the Vorlons. We were so used to the original Kosh and his ways that when we see another one and they are acting in a similar fashion to how Ambassador Kosh did in the early days, but far more aggressive, it makes you uneasy about the state of things when it comes to our so-called friendly ally alien friends.
Choking out leader.
Choked her right in the hallway. And I do adore that shot of him looking like he's got his head tilted looking up, so that when he snaps it around and then psychics her and lifts her up, it's very fluid and it's very striking.
Yes.
Because you can only do so much movement with that costume, so you have to frame it and you have to figure out the physicality of it to make it imposing, and they managed to do that fairly well.
Yeah, they do.
Leader's back,
back,
and she failed.
again.
She failed.
Mm-hmm.
She wasn't there for the OG Kosh. And she
Leader wasn't there to
take me to the fair to change Kosh's underwear. Do you think Kosh wore underwear?
No.
No?
No.
Do you think that he was just naked all the time under that suit?
Yeah.
Letting his ding
I
dong
think the
flop
encounter
about?
suit was his clothes.
Yeah, but I wear clothes and then I have underwear on. It's called underwear.
No, like I think this suit is the underwear and then the cape is like the clothes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I can. Oh, you know what? I'll let that slide.
I don't know. That was me just thinking of that on the spot. Never considered what is Vorlon underwear.
I like Lita, and this starts the reasoning of why I like Lita. This is the beginning of what I love about Lita, is she's a character that is just shit on all the
fucking time.
I fucking love Lita because she's this character that is constantly just
Used and abused and
used
thrown
and
away by everybody.
they just keep screwing her over and over and over again, and that building resentment in the character has to spark off, and in season 5 it does in ways that I and many people don't fully appreciate, let's just say that. But I do like that even though she's on our side, she's on the good guy side, she's still fucked over by everyone. Like, everyone just keeps shitting on her, including the Vorlons now. These creatures that she worshipped and went into their space and almost died for. And now here we are.
And this is before she gets altered.
Yeah, this is before she's like, fully sick, bro, altered.
It's before she's made into a weapon of mass destruction.
Yeah, I don't remember where in the timeline that happens, but
It's after, like, the more evil Kosh turns up.
Yeah.
I
well,
remember
he's just,
that
well,
much
he-
because it's just
yeah.
like he has no value for human life.
Including hers.
Yeah, it's like you are a tool.
You were supposed to carry bits of us, and you weren't carrying a bit of Kosh, so now he's dead. We know, as does Lita by the end, that the bit of Kosh is inside of our boy Sheridan, because Kosh is a little coward and hides his Horcruxes and other people. And
Like why wouldn't you just leave a little bit with somebody else?
yeah, why not?
Like, why send her off with nothing? Like,
You didn't expect to die, I guess.
yeah, but like, safety in numbers, dude.
I gather that it's a temporary holding of things, kind of like how Bones had to carry Spock's Katra in him.
Yeah.
And that was fucking with him after a while.
Mm.
And I think Sheridan is just like a very small fragment is in there, and he has to let that go as well. We will see that
you can't
demonstrated
rebuild
later.
Kosh.
And Lorian
from the
even
part
tells
of
him,
him.
Kosh, you need to let go if Sheridan's to live. And so Kosh is almost a parasitic creature
Yes.
at this point, which I think's a neat addition.
Yes.
A very neat addition, but I am pro new Kosh. I love just an out and out freaky villain guy.
You love your freaks, baby. You love your freaks. I am not the hugest fan of New Kosh. I like that he's more openly sinister, especially, rewatching. So I'm like, the Vaughns are fucked. He's openly fucked himself. Great.
This episode's about leadership, and Kosh
What?
is a bad leader. He's a bad boss. He's abusive.
How is Franklin?
Well, he's learning what it's like to go outside of your leadership role. And then Jakar,
How to be yourself.
how to be yourself.
When you're
How to
not
be
being a
yourself when you're
leader.
not being a leader. Kosh, bad leader. He's a bad guy. He doesn't treat his
Jakar.
staff well. Jakar is directly confronted by Garibaldi when it comes to leadership
Yep, and
and actually having to take it.
Sheridan.
And Sheridan, they just do big poos on him during the episode when it comes to leadership because he has bad calls to make. And everyone's like, "Shut up, Sheridan. You're going to do it this way." And he's like, "Nay," because he's a horse now. "Nay. Feed me oranges. I'm a horse that likes oranges."
Oh.
I'm trying to minimize the risks.
You're not minimizing anybody's risk if you don't bring back solid information. This way, we'll know exactly what we need to shut these things down.
I agree.
Good. All agreed, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
The ayes have it. The War Council has spoken.
Jakar, let's go over him. He opens up our episode. Well, Londo opens up the
Londo does.
episode to complain about
Londo's
Banan.
one scene.
See, his scene was also about leadership. You see, he learned the leadership of Security Chief Garibaldi. see, I'm tying it all together. This episode had themes, Rachel. Oh, did you gather that it had themes when the singer kept talking about souls and fragments of yourself and who's the real you? Maybe that there's multiple versions of yourself that make a one?
Ooh.
I'm getting a heart attack from how profound that was. Jakar is eating some Swedish meatballs, and we get some comedy about how Swedish meatballs are this universal thing that repeats in all of these cultures, and it's very lyrically written in that JMS fashion. I have heard, and I have no point of reference for where this came from. I kept an eye out for this in season 1. But if someone out there can email us at yumyumpod@gmail.com with
Or
the
DM
source,
us.
with the source of where this came from, I've heard continuously that Sinclair's favorite food was Swedish meatballs. And when he traveled back in time as Valen, going from place to place, he introduced Swedish meatballs to the galaxy, and that's why it's a recurring thing. I don't know where that came from. I've heard that be bandied about a lot, and yet I don't know where the love of Swedish meatballs for Sinclair is in this show. He never eats Swedish meatballs. He eats alien blue balls, those little blue balls, and even Garibaldi's like, "What the hell are you eating?" That's the closest. That's the closest. I don't know. Someone tell me. I know this isn't a fever dream. I keep seeing this pop up all the time. Is this just one of those fandom things where collectively everyone just agreed that this is a thing that exists, yet there is no origin point? It is just one of those where it feeds in on itself over and over and over again? I can't tell you. And even you've heard that one.
Yep.
That's not in the comics. I've read some of those. I don't remember him nomming on meatballs in those, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's in that book, the one that JMS's wife wrote, To Dream in the City of Sorrows.
Maybe.
People, give us information on this. Tell us where we can find the origins of this, if it exists. Jakar has the non-war leader who was in the season 2 finale, played by Robin Sachs, the great Robin Sachs, who was in Buffy as what was it, Giles's brother, was he? Was that what he was? Or he was his Watcher friend, right?
Yep.
I always want to say he was his brother. But
Brother in arms.
Brother in arms. So what did you think of this aspect of the story? Because we know that the main driver of Walkabout is not the Walkabout, but Sheridan wanting to gather forces to actually enact the telepath being the weakness for the shadow ships, and he wants all the ships that he can get, but there's only a few people offering them. Jakar could be one of those people, but he is confronted by this war leader who has some very practical concerns as to why they should not give up their remaining vessels over to this possibly frivolous endeavor. What did you think?
Oh, like, okay. This is happening. It's a really cool idea. And I was just like, what's going to happen? And then it's very straightforward.
Who was right for you when you watch it? Who do you naturally side with? Because I completely get where the non-captain's coming from.
Yeah.
That's what makes it a compelling debate.
Yes.
They both have a great foundational point for what is the best course of action. Neither one of them is a fool or a villain or egotistical or cowardly. Both of them, both sides of this argument have a foundation to it and a point of validity.
Here's where I come down on it, though. Jakara's had this realization that we all need to work together. Thanks, old Kosh.
Thank you, Oldkosh.
Thanks, old boy. So, I always feel like he should be bringing that in more and pushing harder for that. Because that's the reason that he got the non-security organized. So it would make more sense to me if he was like, no, we need to do this together. We are not going to let Sheridan risk it all. We're going to stand up and fight with him. But then it feels like it just, like, they wanted Jakar to have a little arc and for there to be more tension when it comes to the battle, so they held off on that.
They wanted the cavalry to come in, or as Captain Pike said in the season 2 finale of Star Trek Discovery, Calvary, which is the wrong word there.
Cavalry arrived just in time.
I actually think that you could do something with this, and I think they do. One, continuity is very important. We already know who this non-captain is. We know how he has benefited from the help of Babylon 5.
And they remind you of that.
Yes, and very smoothly. And we have a buy-in to him.
Yes.
If he was just some other non-captain, we wouldn't have that buy-in. We wouldn't have that leeway as strongly. Or the writer would have to give more to them.
Yeah.
If this was maybe Talon, you could even buy it even more, because we all love Talon. But we know who this man is, even if it is only briefly. We know who he is and how he's benefited from it. So that is great. But I do think there is some merit to the idea that Jakar is using this newfound wisdom from Kosh, but he's applying it to what he's in control of. So Babylon 5 is his space and area, so he's trying to use this here. Oh, I'll get the Narn to be security. I'll get the Narn not to kill the Centauri on the station. I'll do this, I'll do that.
Yeah.
But here he is presented with the opportunity to do that for his people and for everybody else on a grander scale, on something that is beyond just the realms of the station, and he flinches.
Yep. He does. He's not fully there yet. He's not perfect. And that makes a lot of sense.
And to make him a character that is noble, because he's a very noble character, we have to have those shortcomings and vulnerabilities so he isn't this impervious Superman-like character. So if he was just immediately like, yeah, this is how we do it,
Yeah.
we're not going to be able to grow as much. But if he
No.
has the thing that
The
he has
fault.
here, which is he believes that, oh, well, he's the guy that knows more, so he'll do better than I do. Well, he actually has to take those reins and be in charge. But if he was already like that at the beginning of this episode, we wouldn't have anywhere to go. Just like, okay.
Yeah.
And
And
it's
it would feel like, it's like, oh, there's nowhere for him to go. Whereas it makes an interesting comparison because there's always this going on. There's always the parallel journeys of Londo and Jakar. Jakar has somewhere to go in this episode, so he gets a story. Londo has nowhere to go. He is stuck firmly in his hatred.
until we can play with it later.
So he doesn't need to be in this episode anymore.
I do feel the writer's hand
Yes.
when it comes to this, though, because this exists because that conversation and that speech Garibaldi has is just so good and poignant and telling us a theme of the series and about conflict and war and rebellion and fighting for the greater good. And it's really well said, really well acted. And like with the Franklin Walkabout stuff, it does come across as the end was figured out first.
Yeah.
And now let's get to that. So I have this scene here with Garibaldi confronting Jakar. How do I get to that? How do I get to this moment where I can convey this theme in the way that I can with these two characters who have a positive relationship, but one that can be contentious? Because both characters can be very rigid and explosive. So you can get a lot between these two men, and he does, and I love it. But I do feel that little contrivance or that little bit of the writerliness when it comes to, especially when they come on in at the end with the spaceships. It's like, I brought some extra help with me, Captain, and it's all of them, and you just cheer and you go, yay!
Woo! Jakar for the win!
It's
Jakar
nice to have those sentimental moments, because Babylon 5 can be very sobering, very cynical. You can have the Marcab episode where everybody dies and nobody learns anything. But it's also a show where you can have this moment where, oh no, our heroes are about to die, but oh no, the people that they believed would not help them actually come in to help them for selfless reasons, because it's the right thing to do.
Yep.
It shows us that peace can be attained, that unity and teamwork is a thing. And isn't that wonderful, Rachel?
Yes, it is.
Babylon 5 doesn't always go for that. So when it does, it does stand out, and sometimes it can be corny, like it is in this moment.
Yeah. It's an odd thing when Babylon 5 decides to be hopeful. Like, it is an oddity, and it always feels a bit random in a way of, like, you mean he just won? Like, he's won in terms of he's got the information that he wants. Everybody made it out alive, and he's got more support now than he did at the start. And everybody's on the same page. This is odd.
But I like that this episode, for all of its flaws, for all of its faults, it isn't a loud, bombastic mess. It's a quiet, small mess that you can tell wanted to be more poignant and character-driven.
To it.
It just needs more work. It's a script where 2 more drafts and it would have been there.
It could have been a contender.
This time it is possible he could be wrong.
Yeah, it's possible. But you don't follow an order because you know for sure it's going to work out. You do what you're told because your CO has the moral authority that says you may not come back. But the cause is just and fair and necessary. That's why Sheridan's out there. And damn it, that's where that cruiser should be too.
It's time for the spotlight section of the show, where we shine a spotlight on an actor or actress that appeared in this episode, whether they be big or small, recurring or minor or one-off. And we're looking at the actress that played... Do you even remember the character's name?
Kaylin.
Kaylin?
Yeah.
Same as the girlfriend in Space Above and Beyond? Cool. No, that was Kylan.
Yeah.
Kaylin and Kylan, two sci-fi... Well, I think Kaylin's a real name.
Yeah.
But Kaylin,
by-
who is played by Erica Gimple, who is only in this episode.
Only in this one and done.
The character does get referenced again in a rather sad turn, because we didn't really talk about it that much, but her character is presented one way and we reveal a tragedy behind it, which is she's presented as the sexy temptress who's actually after Franklin to get some drugs, but the reason she needs the drugs is because she has an incurable disease that's
Terminal.
killing her, and she actually does need those drugs.
Nerve paralysis.
And for the shortcomings in the script, I was looking at her intently in this, and I actually thought she was really good.
So did I.
I found her very
really-
good.
I've enjoyed her performance more each time that I've watched it, because I'm more able to remove it from the problems with this storyline.
She feels real, even though the dialogue and the stuff written on the page doesn't. Isn't that the strangest thing? I mean, we've seen this in Babylon 5 before.
It's a fucking miracle that she manages to do it. Like,
there are some actors who just have on-screen warmth and presence. She has this beautiful smile and this casual demeanor, the way that she just sits in the chair, and I was very much paying attention to, she used hand gestures a lot, but in a way that was appropriate and not actorly, oh look at me, I'm using hand gestures. She did them in a way where it would feel like you would see somebody doing that when they're at a bar talking to someone and they're just telling a story or conversing. There was these little things like that, and I just think, and her and Richard Biggs are both trying to have chemistry with one another, but it is that script, man. That script is stopping them from having the chemistry. Both of them are actively trying. I get the feeling that they got on set. I just get that vibe overall, but she's not a particularly well-crafted character. It is just you have a likable performer and you've given them zilch. This is season 1.
Yeah.
How many guest stars who we knew were great actors or great character actors, and they were just wasted, constantly wasted in this series? It's actually been a little while since we've had a guest star wasted. And I would say this is the first time in quite some time we've had one where I would just point to them and go, yep, they really let this person down. This actress was let down by Babylon 5. Even though she did sing, which is what she does. She's a musical theater person or a musical person. She sings, she dances, she does a multitude of those things. Are you that familiar with her and her work?
I have seen her in a surprising number of things. How about you, though?
Boston Legal. She was in, I think, 6 or 7 episodes of Boston Legal. She was obviously an attorney that they had to go up against a bunch, and she would often be in the quite heavy-hitting episodes, whether it was them going up against Big Tobacco or them going up against medical stuff, and she was the one who would have to go against James Spader or whomever it was that week, and she was one of the few, I would say, rival attorneys that they had in the courtroom that I would describe as a fairly competent lawyer, and one that wasn't played for comedic effect or villainous effect. She was one where
just a good lawyer.
She was just doing her job very well, and so she does because of that, become forgettable. But
Yeah.
when we watched Boston Legal this time last year,
Mm.
I remembered, oh, that's the chick from Babylon 5.
Yeah.
And I actually liked her. She was very likable. Very, very, again, likable, warm, charismatic. Camera lingers on her in a way where you wouldn't mind just having her in more scenes. So that is primarily it. I noticed that she's one of those where she's just in a bunch of things. You know,
Yeah.
Grey's Anatomy, House. We can go on. I mean, you have the list,
Yes.
but
I do. But I
lots of one and dones.
before I go into what I actually know her from, I just want to acknowledge that I know none of the things that it says that she's known for.
Okay.
Like, the 4 things that are listed are God Friended Me,
A recent series.
Sylvie's Love,
I don't know that one either.
Fame,
Fame, the television series.
which
I do know.
yeah, but I have not seen, and Smoke.
I haven't seen Smoke. Fame is. We should talk about Fame. So there's the musical Fame, and they made a TV series about it. I've only seen some of it, but it is what got her this role, most likely, is her ability to sing. Because this is her singing. She sings 2 songs in this, maybe 3, and it's her singing. And if it's not, why would they hire her?
Yes.
People have uploaded the clips of the songs on YouTube. The IMDb reviews, everyone comments about Walkabout, about her singing and how gorgeous it is, or how much they like her as a singer. So weirdly, the praise that I've ever seen this episode be given is from Erica Gimple fans.
Yep.
And that got me curious of who she was musically speaking. So Fame is obviously a big one, but she does lots of stage musicals, including Fame, the stage musical.
Yes.
And she even did her like a revival tour of that in like 2010,
Yeah.
and it was a big deal.
She's been
and,
involved in various versions and projects associated with Fame.
Mm-hmm.
She was also in another, like, more recent TV show that had to do with Fame again, where she played herself.
Right,
I
and
think.
I want to really underline this. We talk about Star Trek Discovery as well on on our podcast, and some of the actors in that show are stage musical people. And we have often noted that you can tell.
Yep.
There is a different method of acting when you're an improviser, a stage musician, a stage musical person, or you're a musician doing acting, or you're a comedian, or on and on. Depends on material, you have to change things. Jinxo from Babylon 5, that guy's an improviser who also did commercials. And you know that when you see him in Babylon 5, while he's acting against David Warner, who was a legend of both stage and screen and radio, and he was a guy that could do transition from one to the other to the other.
Yep.
Erica Gimple, I really want to just say she does such a good job of not making me know she's a musical person. Yes, she's a singer and in this episode, and she sings, but never did I think when she was having conversations with Franklin, oh, this is a stage musical person that is doing a bit of sci-fi. Never came into my mind. While Star Trek Discovery, there's so many moments with those actors where I'm going, yep, you're a person who was in Rent, and you're having to say sci-fi technobabble, and you're doing it in a way where it almost sounds like a musical.
Yeah.
Well, that's especially bad for Stamets in that show. He's Anthony Rapp's majorly guilty of almost singing in every episode.
Yeah.
Sometimes they make him sing even, but you can tell. So what are the things you know her for?
Well, she's in 80 Things.
Yeah.
And, like, there's 2 other things that I haven't seen her in, I just want to mention now. Her first credit was in 1985. She was Shelley in Spencer for Hire, which I know absolutely nothing about. And then I just found it weird and sort of cute in a dumb way that in one of I think it was a film that she's in called Flirt, and it notes that she's credited as Erica Glimple with an L-E, so they misspelled her name in the credits, and IMDb has to acknowledge that.
That's funny. That does happen.
Yeah. But I obviously also know her from Boston Legal. Also remembered her from Grey's Anatomy. House as well. She's in 2 episodes of Touched by an Angel.
Oh yeah. No Gilmore Girls.
No Gilmore
No
Girls.
6 Feet Under.
No 6 Feet Under. She was also in ER. And there's 2 that, and Everwood, which I've mentioned before.
You're never would Stan. You're what they call, the fan base is called Woodies.
I really don't think I could go back and rewatch that show, to be honest.
You're a former Woody.
And then there's 2 others. There's one thing that was on her list that I know that you occasionally watched, which was Numbers.
Yes, Numbers. Was she one of the numbers?
You do that every time. Great. No, and then there's one last one. And I'm surprised that you haven't asked it if she was in this show, because really it should be in the list of ones that you ask me
More
about, because
often.
you ask me, like, are they in Grey's Anatomy? Are they in Gilmore Girls?
House.
This should be on the list.
What one?
True Blood.
Oh, was she in True Blood?
She was in True Blood.
Oh, awesome.
She was I think it said Elder Fairy, just in one episode.
And most importantly, guys, yes, she was Lindsay Lohan's teacher in Freaky Friday.
Mm-hmm.
I remember it, so you don't have to.
I love you, baby, but I will say goodbye.
What would you rate Walkabout as an episode? Yum being bad or Yum Yum being good? No half yums are allowed.
You go first.
Oh, it's a yum.
It's a yum for me too.
It's just
not like
a bowel movement to
Yeah.
me. It is something to fill up the the episode orders.
it's just an average run of the mill turd.
It's not offensive. Well, actually, if you heard us go through what Walkabout is, you might say it's actually offensive.
Maybe.
And in a weird way, that is the most interesting thing about it, is this could be offensive, but not everyone in the world knows enough about the cultural understanding of Walkabout to be offended. So for almost 30 years, it's skated by without anyone really picking at it all that much because we like the show. That is it. That's all I've got. Are you ready to hear what we'll be looking at and talking about next time on Babylon 5?
On the next Babylon 5.
Next episode is Grey 17 is Missing, a rather infamous episode, episode 19, and this is the DVD description. This is what they have written down. It's as feverish as the episode itself. There's no there. Garibaldi discovers a completely concealed and inhabited station level. Meanwhile, Delenn becomes the likely next head of the Rangers, but a combative rival emerges to challenge her. Guys, if you're familiar with the television series Babylon 5, you know which one Grey 17 is missing, so make sure to tune in and get ready for our discussion next time on Yum Yum 5. Rachel, where can people find us on the internet if they want to follow us and see what we're talking about and even engage with us?
They can find us on the various socials at YumYumPod or YumYumPodcast, which are conveniently provided in the description for this episode.
As is our email address, yumyumpod@gmail.com. If you want to contact us directly, let us know your opinions on things that we've discussed, how you're going with Babylon 5, and so on. In the description, you will also see that we have a Patreon. Yes, we have a Patreon in which we make a lot of exclusive and bonus content on there, as well as a group Discord that you can be a part of, where you can have conversations and have just a jolly old time with fellow Yumlings who are supporting us financially. So if you have the means to do so, please come on over to the Patreon. We have so much happening over there. We're talking about episodes of Space Above and Beyond right now, as well as going through a bunch of movies and Star Trek stuff. It's a good old time. YumYumPodcast on Patreon. If you haven't rated and reviewed the show,
we would appreciate it.
I would very much so. I would like it. I would smile and I would nod. But more importantly, it helps the show out. It gets the word out there to people. It lets us know how you feel about it as well as everybody else. If you can do so, just wiggle your finger on whatever podcast hosting site allows you to do so and give us your rating and or review. But
I have an update.
You have a Yum date?
Yes, I have a Yum date. So you were asking about where it maybe comes from that they think that Valen invented Swedish meatballs. I have the Babylon 5 cookbook.
Oh, is it the cookbook lore?
So I think it might be a little bit of the cookbook. So,
You're fucking kidding me that this is a cookbook lore. Okay.
So this is what, so the cookbook is presented from this perspective of the owner of Fresh Air, the restaurant on
that
B5.
character, that wonderful character we all know.
Emerson Briggs Wallace.
These fucking nerds. Go on.
And this is the note that comes after the Breen recipe. Breen, the universal constant. When I first... So this is a letter from Emerson.
No. Is he going to say, when Sinclair was here, he would always order Swedish meatballs, and I would give them to him?
When I opened Fresh Air here on Babylon 5 3 years ago, naturally I endeavoured to offer a wide variety of the finest foods throughout the known galaxy. Based on my schooling at the École du Juliana in Paris, I already knew many superb recipes from the major sentient species. But that was no substitute for the front lines, one might say. I soon discovered a very strange coincidence. One human food I placed on the menu was Swedish meatballs, along with the appropriate notation as to what a meatball is and what a Sweden is. Ambassador Jakar came to Fresh Air. Also, after Fresh Air, there's like the R in the circle sign because it's a registered trademark.
Just be a normal cookbook. Stop giving me this wank. Fucking bullshit. Oh, yeah, I want to hear from the fucking owner of Fresh Air. You know that place where they have tables so small that a child could barely eat at it? Yeah.
Saw a human eating this dish and said, you have Breen.
Wow.
I tried to explain to him that it was Swedish meatballs. He insisted that I bring him the same meal. The ambassador Malari visited Fresh Air. Rubu balls. He exclaimed.
Yeah, that's what I call my boys too.
So it's
Do you want to suckle my Rubu balls?
Well, it's Rupo really.
Oh, Rupu balls.
Like it's ROOPO.
Please.
I haven't had these Eddie in weeks. Bring me some.
Veer. Cook me up some Rupu balls.
Forget the spoon.
Knowing Peter Jurasek, he would have rolled the R's too. Veer. Get me some Rupu balls. I want to jam them in my mouth and bite them with my little fangs. Give me those Rupu balls. Go on. You want to know what I want? I'll tell you what I want. I want some Rupal balls. This fucking book. And then Kosh came into the restaurant and he said, these are called testicles on my planet. Feed me testicles. And then Jack the Ripper's alongside him and he goes, oh, I love testicles.
Oh.
Not these type, though.
I'm only halfway through the letter.
Oh, fuck, it's a full letter, guys. This episode's extended like 15 minutes because this fucking letter. Go on, I'm here.
He was soon followed by Ambassador Kalaka of the Abari, the Ambassador Vizik of the Drazi, even Ambassador Sheila of the Game.
Oh.
Please do not ask how Game ingest food. It is not appropriate for an openly available publication.
Damn it. No Pakmara, huh?
Mm.
They're carrion eaters,
Yeah.
but it's a universal meal, so which part of the body's like Swedish meatballs? Well, I think we just went over that.
Each one asked for the Swedish meatballs by a name of an identical food found on their homeworlds. I have now had 27 different species come through fresh air, registered trademark, claiming that Swedish meatballs are actually a dish created by their own race. Some paranoid pundits argue that this is clinching proof of the sole sinister conspiracy behind events in the universe. They claim that a few vastly superior beings are manipulating us, creating this impossibly illogical coincidence to observe our response. Like rats in a maze. Some xenophobes go one step further and say...
Oh, the fucking fresh air guy. He's just like, you know what, though, guys? I just want you to know I'm against those xenophobes, just so you know, because I make alien food as well. So, yeah, I'm just dropping that down on the table for you. Fuck, where was this
Some xenophobes go one step further and say that the Vorlons are, in fact, the guilty party. The Vorlons manipulating us, pish posh. Sign...
Pish posh. Fuck, you know who I'll cast as this character? I know who I'd cast. What's their name? Do we even know their name? What was it? Like,
Emerson Briggs Wallace.
Fucking Richard E. Grant. That's who's gonna play it, and he can play his character from Posh Nosh. Pish posh. They say these Vorlons are interrupting our way of being through meatballs. That ain't accurate. Was that the letter? Is that all?
Yeah.
There's not even a mention of Sinclair.
No, but the idea that it's manipulation and, like,
Fuck
the
off.
Vorlons. But
This is why I don't engage with the Babylon 5 extended universe and its books and crap, because it's like full of crap like that where it's like, oh, did you actually know that the maitre d' or owner of Fresh Air, you know, that restaurant that they go to every now and then, is a really dedicated and full-fledged character as a philosophical standpoint on the universe at large. Ugh. You know what, though? He should have signed off his letter with, good eating to you, pish posh.
Mr. Cannibal!